People deluded, I'm back again. Now, if you're looking at the latest reports, Arsenal have been linked with Ivan Perišić. For those who don't know, I can't imagine you don't. The Croatian international Inter Milan player, best known for his time for Inter Milan. I know he's played for Borussia Dortmund. Probably remember him at Wolfsburg, some of you, and things like that. And if you don't, you remember him because he's always linked with Manchester United, or definitely under Jose, and it's public knowledge that Jose really wanted him. I can't understand why he's linked with Arsenal now. I think he's a very good player. We'll get on to that. But the specifics are, there could be truth in it because Arsenal's mouthpiece, David Ornstein's tweeted about it. So he's got to have heard something legit in regards to our interest. It's a bit bewildering because we're being linked with a whole host of names. At this point, you know already. So there is some truth into it. He's a very good player. I think one thing that goes over people's heads is how much of a physical handful he is. He's completely different to Arnautovic. But what I mean by that is people can see they're two different players. But when you look at Arnautovic, you look at the goal scoring and things like that. People rarely speak of how much of a physical handful he is. I know because I watched him against Koscielny. Physically, Perišić is a handful. I don't know how many headed goals he has, but he can score goals with his head. He's obviously a physical threat as well. He's obviously a terrific dribbler with a football. He's a decent winger. He's a very decent player. I've got time for him. I was impressed with him at the World Cup playing for Croatia. He's a good player. He's experienced, of course, as well. And we don't have a winger. He has what we need, and technically he's got experience. For me, I don't think this is a transfer to be going down purely because in 25 games this season, 18 in the league, he's only got 3 goals and 2 assists. Now, that could help us, but I mean, at 29 years of age, is this really the sort of thing you want to be going down? It does kind of not make sense of our transfer policy. We've got several players that are kind of, whether they're at the end of their careers, whether they're not good enough and on long-term contracts or difficult contracts to get them off on good wages and things like that. Why would we now add Perišić? Now, Perišić, if we were to get even 2 good years out of him and he helped us get into the Champions League, then it's worth it. But he's a player on the decline. He's contracted by Inter Milan till 2022. I think he signed a new deal last year. So he's caking. He's secured his last big contract. He's done what he needs to do. But from an Arsenal's perspective, he's got to recruit them wages elsewhere. So either unless Inter Milan are going to subsidise that, we're going to have to make up for that, whether that's through bonuses and whatever. Allegedly, we ain't got no money for wages or any signings permanently. So how is it going to work? Why would it make sense giving him money, giving him that sort of cash and buying him for the fee, 35 million in the summer immediately on loan is what's being muted and reported. Allegedly, Inter Milan do want to sell him. So I don't know if it's drumming up interest, but it doesn't make sense. We know we need to. I'm not against experience. If we can find a 29-year-old centre half that can immediately step into the team, then so be it. But we need to restrict this club. We have a lack of assets. You look at it, only probably Torreira off the top of my head in terms of who can be sold for big money. We know Ramsey could have, but we're at where we're at now. So we need to be looking for them players there, like Torreira is at 22 to 26, with a possible resale value. Again, I'm all for experience. I'm not against 27 to 29-year-olds or 30-year-olds even, or even Socrates is 30, 31. People like that can impact the team. But it has to be for a decent fee, and I don't think it's worth paying however much the loan fee is, and on top of that, the permanent fee in the window. And again, it is bewildering because you have to think: is this a genuine target of Unai Emery? Is this Raul Sanllehi? I know Mislintat's leaving next month, but because Mislintat have suggested this one, was it completely vetoed by all of them? And it's Stan Kroenke who said he wanted wanted him and wanted that signing. Of course, it's not, but you get the point. I have to think of whose policy is, like, what is our policy? It looked like we was trying to do this young player thing, going against the current model of not being able to spend, and then it looked like we were cost cutting where we could. This signing doesn't make sense because first of all, where's this 35 million suddenly come from? I mean, couldn't you do a build deal for Malcolm? I know we've dealt with his agents and Barcelona's a different kettle of fish, and I'm being a bit blasé, but in terms of the strategy, like, why would you go for this sort of player? Like, we could never get Douglas Costa, and he's probably on way more wages, but I'd be more inclined to go for someone like that to a degree. I can't really see how Perišić fits the profile. Yes, he's a winger. Yes, you could say he takes people on. He's dynamic. He's a physical hand. He's a technical handful as well as a physical handful. But I don't really see it, man. End of the day, 34 goals in 142 appearances for Inter Milan isn't the best, but isn't the worst. He would help us. He's got 88 goals and assists together for in 143 games for Inter Milan as well. I don't know what's happened there between 142 and 143, but in 140 odd games, he's got some decent records. Like, he's a decent player. I don't want anyone to think I don't think he's not a bad player, not a good player. But it doesn't make sense. I really can't see it. And there clearly is some truth into this because, like I said, the Perišić news is being reported by David Ornstein as well as everybody else. But it is what it is, man. If he comes, he comes. But it really is bewildering. If this is a genuine target of Unai Emery, then I have to wonder, like, what is the sort of player he wants then? Because if we were to get into the Champions, if we probably won't now, but if he signed in the summer and we got the Champions League this season and he helped us with our goals next year and he's 31 declining, then cool, he served his job. But we're gonna get into the period of having, not to get at Mkhitaryan, but Mkhitaryan's at the wrong age of 30 to a degree. Players like that, Mesut Ozil still technically to a degree. Koscielny now, players that are either at the end of their career winding down on big money and we're struggling to move them on, whether you believe we can or not. Whether you believe these players should come in or go in, which my opinion doesn't matter. You look at the current model of being self-sufficient, being able to sell assets, being able to move off poor players, and this would just be another one. He's not a poor player, but it'd get to the point where he's just another player we're struggling to move off, because who's going to want to touch him at 32, 33? Lucky if he gets a move to China and things like that. So, yeah, it's a bit bewildering, man. Again, if he comes and he hits the ground running, then cool, fair enough. He's a good player, like I said. But away from what I might feel on the player, and I just look at his age, his profile, and the relative constructs to Arsenal, it doesn't make much sense. But what shall be, innit? So, yeah, and it really, I mean, not that, obviously, Perišić is currently better than Reiss Nelson, but what does that mean for Reiss Nelson? You loaned out Nelson, we needed a winger, but you loaned him out, you bring in Perišić. What happens when Nelson comes back? Of course, I still think we need a winger regardless of Nelson, you need options, so I sound like a hypocrite, but if you're Reiss Nelson, you signed a new deal, you think there's a spot there for on your return, which there will be, you've got to think, like, what is this? This guy's 29, like, what's going on here? If you're young Amici and things like that, or Saka, who it will come, but they're probably a long way from first team. You've got to think like, what go on for this manager? Like, I'm playing quite well for under 23s. I'm patient. I'm waiting for my chance. You're saying the 29-year-old with no longevity out of the blue. If we could sign him with no like mandatory option to buy, and it can just be, if worse comes to worse, a loan for the next 6 months or so. Well, not even 6 months. The next couple of months to the season, then cool, fair enough. But if it's one of them where we're stuck having to pay a fee, then it's a dangerous game. But Raul Sanllehi and Unai Emery, like I've said previously, they're up to something. We just don't know what. We just really don't know what. So we'll see, man. We'll actually see what he's saying. But in regards to my opinions on this or the emerging news, I've got nothing more to add. So I'm going to get out of your hair. So comment if you've got any comments. Like the vid for me. Subscribe. Do the rest. DG. I'm out.